Hello, everyone. This is Rabbi Ari Sachs of Congregation Beth Mordechai, coming to you with another edition of this week's online Parashah class. This week, we're learning Parashat Vayikra, the first book of the first Torah portion of the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. And we'll be looking at the second third of the Torah reading as we are for this current year, beginning with chapter 3. But before we get to the actual text and to what we're actually going to be studying today, I do want to share, just as a brief introduction, the name for this class, which is All for One and One for All, taken from the Three Musketeers, the idea of, that we're all kind of working for the same particular goal, and that we all together will work for the benefit of each individual, so that there is this unique symbiotic relationship between our individual actions, which work for the entire collective, and our collective action, which works for the individual. And the reason why I entitled this class One for All, All for One and One for All, is because that one element of this week's of the content of this week's class, particularly the sacrifice known as the sacrifice of well-being, or the shalamim, has to do with the idea that all of our actions are collectively based in one particular action, and that one action also represents all of the other actions that are done. Meaning that it is possible within each thing that we do as human beings to not only be doing the thing that we're doing, but that the thing that we're doing represents a collective sense of ideas, a collective sense of doings that had existed prior to that moment, or that are existing concurrently at the same time. So just to give one example of what I mean by that what we're doing right now when it comes to learning Torah and to studying the text, in this particular moment, we're learning one particular text and we're engaging with one particular idea, but that embedded within this act is a whole history of other acts of learning Torah, and that there is a benefit to that actual process of learning, and that what we're doing here speaks to all of the times in which learning has happened in the past. Now, on one hand, you could say, well, that seems a little too grandiose. That's, we're just doing a little bit of learning here. What does this have to do with, the great rabbis who had written such incredible commentaries, one of which we're going to be reading in a moment? Is this learning necessarily on the same level? And the answer, I think, is not necessarily that each time that we learn is the same exact moment in which learning has happened in the past. There are many different kinds of learning that's out there. But that when we learn, we're almost like carrying in our backpacks all of those experiences of learning. Also, all those moments in which people were fearful of learning. The holiday of Hanukkah has a wonderful midrash about how when the students of Torah were spinning dreidels as the game to tell all of the Roman soldiers who were spying on them that, oh, we're not actually learning Torah, we're actually just playing this game, which is why we're here together. Meaning that there have been many times in our history in which the act of Torah learning was seen to be an act that that was forbidden, and as such, every time that we learn, even if it's in a positive moment in Jewish history as it is now, takes that memory and places it into this moment, so that this moment in and of itself acts out those memories. And what's more is that this act alone, this act can also stand by on its own, meaning that this act represents some new element of learning that is important for it to exist. Not necessarily that it is a container for all that's in the past, but that every individual action has a merit in and of itself. That it adds a verse to the learning that has been going on for centuries. And as such, I think that it is a very unique ability of human beings to, maybe whether it's through memory, whether it's through connections that we make from between one thing and the other. I think it's a very new thing for human beings to do an act, and that we're not just doing that particular act, but we're including in it all other kinds of events, of actions that have happened in our history, and bring it to bear in this particular moment. And I think that that's something for us to especially consider with the content of this week's learning, because what this week's learning is dealing with is the sacrifices I mentioned before of the shalamim. Now, the root for shalamim is shin lamed mem. Shin lamed mem, which it means wholeness or completeness or fullness, and is most famously used in the word shalom, meaning peace or hello, goodbye. And one commentator actually on the purpose of this sacrifice of the shlamim points out that one of the unique features, which we'll get into a little bit later, is that this sacrifice is the only one, or one of the only ones, that there's a sacrifice given to God. Part of it is eaten by the priests, and part of it is eaten by the people who actually offer the sacrifice. And as such, one commentator points out that in a certain sense, it is as if you are greeting this group of individuals, of the donors, of the priests, and of God, and you're coming together and enjoying a meal, one with the other. So it is almost as if the shalom sense of greeting is of, hello, I'm here, and we're going to join in this meal together, which I think is a very beautiful understanding of the reason why this sacrifice is known as shalamim. But what I want to focus on today is in this phrase of zevah shlamim korbano, that his offering was a sacrifice of well-being, has an interesting set of commentary, has an interesting 2 lines of commentary written in a 3rd century compilation of midrashim, of rabbinic texts commenting on Leviticus, called the Sifra. And we're going to be focusing on 2 particular comments in chapter 16 of the Sifra, which deals with this zevah shlamim korbano, this offering of the sacrifice of well-being. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through the Hebrew, and you can see the English below here, which I've translated earlier. V'im zevach shlamim korbano, the verse from our Torah portion, and if his offering is a sacrifice of well-being. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Judah says, Kol hamevi shlamim, mevi shalom le'olam. And this very beautiful teaching, and if you take away anything from this class, this is the phrase I want you to take away with. Kol hamevi shlamim, every person who brings this well-being sacrifice, this sacrifice known as shlamim, mevi shalom le'olam, brings peace or wholeness or fullness to the world. Ein li ela shlamim, but this only refers to this particular sacrifice of shlamim, meaning that when one is offering this particular sacrifice of shlamim, one creates this aura of wholeness and of bringing a fullness or bringing peace to the entire world. And when it says ein li ela shlamim, but this only refers to shlamim, that it seems to mean that it is only this one sacrifice that does that job. However, we know that there are multiple sacrifices. There is the olah, the burnt offering. There is the mincha, the grain offering. There is the chatat and the asham, the sin and the guilt offering. And there's also the todah, the thanksgiving offering. So there's so many different kinds of sacrifices, and yet only, according to this text, only this one is able to actually bring peace and wholeness into the world, since probably because of that word shalem embedded in the root, embedded in the word. But in fact, what we're about to see is that within this sacrifice of shlamim is all of the other sacrifices, all of the entire ritual of the sacrifice, and by containing all of that, it means that every sacrifice actually brings wholeness into the world. And so let's see that happen within the text. Uminayin lerabot et hatodah. But how do we know that this idea of bringing peace to the world, to bring wholeness to the world through the shlamim, also includes doing it through the todah, through the thanksgiving offering? Arbe et hatodah shehi ba'a min hashlamim. That, as it translates here, it includes the thanksgiving since it comes from the well-being, from the sacrifice of well-being. And for that, I want to share with you that if you go to chapter 7 of Leviticus, around verse 15 or so, that the well-being offering, the shlamim, is connected with the thanksgiving offering, and they're given together. And since they are given together, therefore, when you talk about shlamim, you're also talking about the giving of the todah. And therefore, that todah sacrifice is also part of bringing peace to the world. Now with the next one. Fine, that's fine about the todah, but uminayin lerabot et haolah. But how do we know it includes the olah offering, which is a sacrifice in which the entire animal is burnt up and given to God, Arbe et haolah shehi ba'a beneder uvinedava. That we know that the shlamim offering includes the olah, because just like the shlamim, it is given by an oath or because of a donation. In other words, that you do not have to bring an olah. You do not have to bring an offering up to God. Just like you don't have to bring a shlamim, a peace offer or a well-being offering to God. Those are by your own choice, whether you make an oath that you're going to do so or that you do so completely voluntarily, but that you're not required, as with other offerings, to have to give to God. And so let's look at actually some of those other required offerings. Uminayin lerabot et habechor v'et hamaaser v'et hapesach. And how do we know that this shlamim offering includes both the offering of the first fruits and the tenth that must be given to the priests, and then also the Passover offering, all offerings that are required to give by law? How do we know it's included? Arbe et habechor v'et hamaaser v'et hapesach, that all these are included, she'enan ba'in al chet, because all of those are not given by way of committing a sin. Meaning that, yes, we are required to give these sacrifices, but just like the shlamim, these sacrifices are not done out of a sense of guilt or out of a sense of shame or out of a sense of committing any kind of sin. These are all positive things. These are things that are commanded to do so joyfully, to say that I'm offering all of this to God. It's not because I've done something bad to God. Fine. So those are also included when you say the word shlamim. And how does that entail? And so now what do we do, though, about all of those offerings that are related to sin or to guilt? Uminayin lerabot chatat ve'asham. What do we do about those offerings? Because those don't seem to be connected to the offering of well-being. These are offerings in which you're saying, I'm sorry, or I've committed a wrong, which is not all included in well-being. How could they be connected? Talmud Lomar, zevah. That the text, as it is written, says zevah shalamim. If you look up here, this is the phrase from the Torah, that there are three parts of the sacrifice: zevach, shlamim, and korbano. The actual sacrifice is simply known as shlamim, or as the well-being. The zevach shlamim means that it is a sacrifice of well-being. And so the question is, well, why does it need to say zevach shlamim? Why couldn't it just say shlamim? So the answer is here. It says zevach because a sacrifice is one that you have to offer, just like the chatat and the asham, which are done with via animals, but that this particular offering is, you're giving something up. You're saying, I for some reason, I'm being compelled to be able to offer this. That the sense, I think, of sacrifice is that we are being told that we have to be able to do, that we're told that we have to do this. And so, and that there's something pulling at us to be doing it, that we're sacrificing something of us to be able to give this thing of well-being. And so that sense of zevach, of sacrifice, is inherently connected to chatat and asham, of the sin and the guilt offerings, which are done because we have this guilt and the sin that we have to get off our chest. And so now, what is the connection with everything else related to sacrifice? And what about the birds and the menachot and the grain offerings and the yain and the wine and the levona and the fats and the eitzim and the wood that is used for the sacrifices? How do we know that they're also involved in this act of shlamim, which brings peace to the world? Talmud Lomar, shlamim korbano. As the text says, shlamim korbano. Meaning that we could have just said that this well-being sacrifice is the word shlamim, but just like we pointed out that zevach is written there for a reason, so too the term korbano is there for a reason, and korbano means his offering. And all of those other things, the birds, the grains, the wine, all of those other things are particular elements of his offering to God, so that the sacrifice will be accepted. Meaning it's not just the particular well-being part of the sacrifice, but that his offering includes all the accoutrement, all of the other things that are connected to sacrifice, which is why there is that catch-all related to korbano. All this is to say that by way of connection, by way of seeing how the shlamim offering is inherently connected to every other piece of sacrifice, that all of those sacrifices also contain the element of bringing peace to the world, like shlamim. As the text concludes here, ha kol ha-mevi shlamim mevi shalom le'olam. That thus all who bring a well-being brings peace to the world. So that within this act of giving the shlamim, we are also enabling all of these other sacrifices to be bringing peace to the world. And in a certain sense, by doing those sacrifices, we're also doing a little bit of the shlamim. And we're doing the shlamim, we're doing for all of those other ones as well. And that's sort of both the one for all, that the one is acting on behalf of the all. The other element, though, to this is it's not just that the act of shlamim, just like many of our actions, can be connected or related to other actions in the past that we bring into this moment. And so as we do this action, let's say of learning, or let's say of being with a loved one, or of anything that we're doing in which there's a history attached to it, in which we can find connections to other things that we may have done, or other things that are happening around the world. it's not just that this moment is a container for all of that, but that this action is also independent and also has value in and of itself. And so we turn now to the second piece on shlamim, davar acher, another thing. And you can see it below here. Davar acher, shlamim, when it comes to this term of shlamim, of the sacrifice of well-being, shehakol shalom bahen, that everyone or that everything is full within this particular element of shlamim. Hadam v'ha'imurin lamizbeach, that in this act, the blood and the burnt parts of the offering are given to the table, are given to the altar. Hachazeh v'shuk lakohanim, and the breast and the shin are given to the priest for them to have. Ha'or v'habasar, and the skin and the meat are given leva'alav, or leva'alin, are given to the donors, the people who offer the sacrifice. And I think that what is key here is that this one act, in the way that it is done, in the way that it is being, in the way that the shlamim actually exist in and of itself, is that it represents the goal that it is trying to achieve. That it is achieving wholeness and peace because it is bringing peace to all who actually enjoy the sacrifice. To God, who receives the burnt offerings, to the priest who eats of it, and so to from the donors. And so that relationship among all those different elements make this single act one that brings wholeness. And when you take into account the fact that this act also contains the history and the elements of all of the other sacrifices that have been given, you have a single moment, a single action that is so pregnant with meaning, that is so full, not to use the pun in this case, but is so full of power for what it is trying to do in the world. And I think that when we go in through our everyday actions, I think that there's two important lessons to take away. Number one, that everything we do has a history, that everything we do has connections to other actions that have either been done in the past or are being performed in the present, and that we can think of our action as a container for all of that, all of those good things, all those important things that we want to see in the world, that we want to bring into the world. I mean, we have great power to be able to be representative of all that is wonderful in the world. And at the same time, though, it is not just about the fact that when we learn, we're bringing in the past, or that our actions are supposed to reflect as a symbol for other things, but that our act in and of itself as an individual act is significant, and that the act that we do must have meaning in and of itself, that it should be consistent with what it is trying to teach, with what it's trying to come across. That just because I'm teaching here doesn't mean that it's important that I'm bringing all the other teachings and I'm thinking about all the wisdom that has been a part of learning to bring into this moment. That's irrelevant if this moment of learning isn't relevant and interesting. And so we have to be careful to make sure that everything we do is done in the right mindset, that we are trying to bring something positive into the world in that particular action, and that if we do, then all of those other actions that are contained within it will almost receive a bit of the wind, a bit of the good feelings that derive, a bit of the reach, a bit of the smell, you could say, that derives from the joy of this particular action that we do. And so my hope is that as we go into the future, we think about all the ways in which we can enact good into the world, all the ways in which we can bring peace, wholeness, as the Shlamim offering does, thinking about our own particular actions as being able to offer that, and how within that, the success of those particular actions, we also bring in the past, bring in all of these other things that are in the world that are connected to what we're doing and make them come alive as well. And with that, we'll conclude for today's class, and I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something, and take care and have a wonderful Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.